Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. So today, I'm going to be sharing my absolute favorite fall fantasy book recommendations. Alright guys, so I am so excited to do this video. Fall is by far my favorite season, and typically in the fall I gravitate towards more fantasy books. So the way I'm going to break this video down is I thought of things that just remind me of fall. So we have like some dark academia, the haunted woods vibe, and then just like some creepy gothic fantasy books. I will be doing a completely separate video for romances that remind me of fall, so that should be out the following Sunday after this video drops. So you can definitely check in the timestamps down below if you're looking for a certain type of fall fantasy. And yeah, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Thursday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit the notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about these autumnal books. Alright, so starting off with books that have that dark, creepy, gothic vibe. First up, we have Belladonna, and this is by Adalyn. I recently read this book, and I absolutely loved it. So this book is a dark YA fantasy, and it's kind of surrounding a mystery, and then it has a little bit of romance, a little bit of horror, and it's just the perfect book for fall. So we are following Signa, and in the beginning of the story, she is a baby, and her mother has taken her to this party. So while Signa is upstairs sleeping, the entire party ends up dying. So then death shows up in corporeal form and starts ushering their souls into the afterlife. However, when he goes to take Signa's soul, he realizes for some reason he can't take her soul into the afterlife, and he just becomes completely intrigued by her. So then he starts following her around as she's growing up, which is actually kind of upsetting for Signa because everyone that is entrusted to take care of Signa ends up dying suspiciously. So the entire town kind of thinks that Signa's cursed, and the story goes from there. Eventually, these relatives, these distant relatives that Signa has never met, end up taking her, and as soon as she gets there, she finds out that the mother of this family had recently passed away under these suspicious circumstances, and that the youngest sister is also currently very ill. So Signa is trying to solve the mystery of what is going on with this family. Also, Signa can see spirits, probably having something to do with death. And also we realized very early that Signa cannot die. So once again, I absolutely loved this book. It was so good and gave me all the fall vibes. I will say this is YA fantasy. I recommend this for older YA fantasy readers. There are parts in this that creeped me out. There's one scene in particular with a ghost. I turned all the lights on in my house. I was not okay. So definitely just keep that in mind, but overall this is an amazing story and perfect for the fall. Alright, so next up we have another very creepy read, House of the Hollow by Krystal Sutherland. So I actually read this last October, and it gave me nightmares. We are following these three girls, and when they were very young, they ended up going missing, only to be found a few days later, slightly altered. So now they have a slightly different appearance, they have these magical powers, and they end up growing up sort of as outcasts because everyone can tell something is just a little off about them. So Iris is the youngest sister, and that's the point of view we're following. And her older sister, Gray, ends up going missing. And Iris soon realizes she needs to solve the mystery of when they were first taken as children in order to find Gray. So the one thing about this book is the aesthetic and the imagery. This book, it's grotesque. It really has the whole like fall decaying vibes. Like there are some parts of this book that are just absolutely disgusting, but it really works. So if you want a fall book that is going to make you uncomfortable but also make you feel completely immersed in the story and also gross you out a little bit, I would definitely pick this up. It's also super short, so you can easily read it in one sitting. All right, and last up for like the scarier fantasy, we have House of Salt and Sorrow, and this is by Erin A. Craig. So this was one of my favorite reads of last year, and it's actually a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling. I'm not very familiar with that original story. However, I love this book so much. We are following Annalay, and I believe in the very beginning of the story, we're actually at her sister's funeral. So Annalay is one of 12 sisters, and for some reason, her sisters seem to be dying in very mysterious ways and at a very quick rate. So Annalay is trying to figure out why her family has been cursed. And while all of this is going on and Annalay is trying to solve this mystery, her sisters are also sneaking out every night and dancing to their heart's content at this very ethereal and like mysterious ball. So this book has all of the gothic haunted house vibes. This is taking place on a manor that's in this remote location on the sea, and it is written in such a beautiful way. But like, I remember specifically there's a scene that involves a bathtub that I screamed out loud, and I think I threw the book and ran downstairs to my husband. So this book definitely has its like creepy moments, but overall it's just a very fun story, and I did not guess the twist at the end. All right, so moving on to dark fairy tale type books. So I feel like in the fall, I like to read more like whimsical stories that also have a darker undertone. So a perfect example of this is Nettle and Bone. So I actually got this recommendation from watching one of Elliot Brooks' videos, and she was absolutely raving about this book. And I am so happy I did, because I ended up reading this book in one sitting. We are following Mara, and she has been raised in a convent, and then one day she goes to see her sister, who has been married to a king. So when she gets there, she realizes that her sister has been being horribly abused. The king has been making her sister stay pregnant and just beating her when she's not pregnant, and it's just a really rough life. So Mara realizes that she needs to do something. So this is where it kind of turns into a fairy tale. She ends up going to find a witch for help. The witch ends up giving her these tasks that she has to complete. I love a good trial story, and there's like a little bit of that in this book. And then they go on this journey, and they end up picking up all of these other like interesting and kind of funny characters along the way while they are trying to figure out a way to kill this king. So this book has witches, it has godmothers, it has an evil king, and it's just so good, but also gives me those like darker vibes. And I will say, I called this book Demon Chickens and Friends to everyone I've recommended it to. I love the Demon Chicken. It is my favorite character. If you know, you know. But overall, I highly recommend this book. It is just really fun, but also has those like darker vibes. All right, and next up for another like whimsical autumnal story, we have An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. So I actually picked this up because a lot of people compared it to ACOTAR, and while there are definitely some similarities, those two books are vastly different. So this book is much more lyrical. Like I said, it's a very whimsical story, and it has more of like the trickster fae vibe, while ACOTAR is ACOTAR. It's like romance, action, and just two completely different things. I did really enjoy this. So this is following Isabel, and she is a very good painter, essentially. And she lives in a world where humans and fae sometimes interact. So the prince of the Autumn Court ends up going to Isabel and asks her to paint his portrait. So she does, but unfortunately, she paints human sorrow in the prince's eyes. And since this is a human emotion, the fae becomes very upset and says he's going to take her to the Autumn Court to stand trial. So it's very much like a journey type book. So the prince is like taking her through his lands. And although at the very beginning we're seeing the Autumn Court as like beautiful and you have these multicolored leaves, and this book is very atmospheric, you also, similar to like House of the Hollow, get the whole decaying part of fall and these things dying, and parts of it are a little grotesque, and I just really love the way this is written. I love Margaret Rogerson's writing. I've read 3 books by her and I've loved every single one, and everyone has felt so vastly different from each other. But this book is really good. Another really short read you can read in one sitting, but this will give you all the like fall atmosphere vibes you could possibly want. All right, so next up is one of my favorite like subgenres of fantasy. So in the autumn, I really love to read dark academia. So I have 2 books that I love. First up, we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This book is very polarizing. People either seem to really love it or really hate it. I really enjoyed it. This is by the same author that wrote Shadow and Bone and the Six of Crows series. However, this is an adult dark academia book, so it feels very different from her other works. This is following Galaxy Stern, or Alex Stern, and she's lived a very rough life. She was dating this drug dealer when she was younger, and by the time she is 20, she is the only survivor of this multiple homicide. So she is just trying to get her life together, and then this random benefactor comes in and says, we would like you to work for Yale, and you're going to be overseeing these secret societies. So the one thing about Alex is she can see spirits. So that is very helpful because these societies, or these very secret societies, are dealing with a lot of things involving the occult. So this is a little bit of a murder mystery. We're also doing different time jumps, and it's really just Alex supervising these occult things that are going on at this school. And I loved it. I just love the whole vibe of this book. I feel like I've been saying vibe a lot in this video, and I apologize for that, but it does have that like creepy dark academia setting, and you're seeing these ghosts and these spirits, and some of them are very angry, and it's just, I really enjoyed it. So highly recommend if you like dark academia. I would definitely check out Ninth House. Also, I'm pretty sure she just announced the second book will be coming out, I believe, next year. So it's been a while. I might be doing a reread of this. Let me know if that's something you want to see me vlog. But yeah, highly recommend. Definitely check it out. And next up we have a very hyped dark academia book, and that is The Atlas Six, and this is by Olivie Blake. So this is following 5 young academics that are all competing to become caretakers of the Library of Alexandria. So I will say this book is not very fast-paced, it's very character-driven, and this book might be smarter than me. I honestly had to listen to the audio while following along on my ebook to like make sure I didn't miss any small details, and the middle is very dense. However, the characters in this book is what really sold me on it. I hated every single one of these characters, but I wanted the best for them. I just feel like Olivie Blake did a very good job of making you love these characters, even though they do such dumb and just frustrating things. But I really love this, especially the end. I feel like the end just really makes up for like the slog in the middle, and I definitely recommend picking this up. The second book is, I believe, coming out in October or November, and I cannot wait. I definitely have to do a reread of this before I jump into that. But anyway, if you want dark academia, definitely check this out. All right, and next up we have witchy books. So I'm gonna be completely honest, I have not finished this first book. I'm a little bit more than halfway into it. So I had planned on finishing it obviously by the time I filmed this video, but with scheduling and just my work being insane last week, it's not finished. So that is Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. So where I'm at so far is we are following Violet, and she is the king's prophet, and she got this role by saving the prince when they were children. So she kind of grew up as like a peasant and now is living a very luxurious lifestyle. So the prince and Violet do not get along, even though she saved his life. The king really praises Violet, and the prince is very resentful of this. There's also a prophecy that was put in place prior to Violet becoming the prophet that said that if the prince did not marry and find love, or at least not marry, that the entire realm would essentially be destroyed. So the king and all of the townspeople are very invested in the prince getting married. Unfortunately, the prince is super stubborn and a bit of a romantic, so he doesn't want to marry for duty, he wants to marry for love, and that's pretty much as far as I've gotten into the story. There are some other things that happen, but I don't know if there's spoilers or not, so I don't even want to talk about it. But I've had friends that have read this and really enjoyed it. They said it was like a cozy, autumnal, like witch fairy tale type book, so I'm very much looking forward to finishing it. I will do a full review on my Instagram since I wasn't able to do it here, and I will be talking about this in my September wrap-up. Next up is more of a creepy witch story. We have The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I actually read this about 2 years ago, and it was so different than what I was expecting, but I just love the message of this book. So we're following Emmanuel, and she's growing up in this very patriarchal society, and everyone listens to the prophet, and the prophet is known for being this very hard man that takes multiple wives and killed these witches, and women are really just looked down upon in the society, and especially Emmanuel, because she looks different from everyone else. Her mother ended up having an affair with an outsider, so she has like darker skin, and she's just really shunned by a lot of these townspeople, even though she tries to do everything in her power to be a good member of this community. So one day she's out chasing this goat, and she ends up in this dark forbidden wood where she finds her mother's journal and starts reading it. And then the spirit of these witches start making things in Emmanuel's life very interesting, and dark things start happening. And this book has so much like feminine empowerment, and I just really enjoyed it. Also, the ending is super disturbing and kind of graphic, and just the eerie, creepy wood and the witch vibe was done so well. The writing in this just creeped me out the entire time, and I love that in a good witch story. So highly, highly recommend. Just read it with the lights on. And next up, we have a fantasy romance. And I know I said I was going to do a separate fall romance video. However, this book is just so unique and not like anything else I've ever read that it's going to be in both videos. So we have The Undertaking of Hart and Mercy by Megan Bannen. So I pitched this on Instagram as if Hayao Miyazaki from Studio Ghibli was tasked with making a You've Got Mail reimagining and then throwing in zombies for good measure. It is just such an interesting concept. We are following Mercy, and she is working at this undertaking agency where they get bodies ready to go into the salt sea. And the imagery in this is so disgusting. So in the very beginning, she's like getting this body ready, and there are like body fluids leaking out of the body, and she's just describing it while like doing her day-to-day tasks. And I was just not ready for it. It was so gross. But anyway, we also are following Hart. And Hart is a demigod that is tasked with killing dredges, which are these corpses that have come alive because of angry souls that like inhabit them. So he has to stab these dredges in the appendix so the souls come out. And he also has the power where he can see souls. That's like his demigod gift. So anyway, Hart has to take the double dead bodies to Mercy to go to the Salt Sea, and they absolutely hate each other. So for some reason, upon meeting, Hart and Mercy just were complete enemies, and they always give each other a hard time every time they have to see each other. So now Hart is kind of lonely. He's demigod. A lot of people are afraid of him. They don't know like what he's like. He could possibly be immortal. So he ends up writing this letter to a friend, and he doesn't think it's going to be delivered. But then this giant rabbit, snarky mailman, ends up taking it and delivering it to Mercy. Now, he didn't sign it, so Mercy doesn't know who this letter is from. And she realizes that she feels very similarly to this person. So she writes a letter that is also delivered by a giant animal, and it goes from there. So my one critique of this is I wish the fantasy story kind of lasted throughout the entire book. So this book is written so beautifully and it's so descriptive that I completely could imagine everything that was going on, especially with these giant mythical characters. There are like these sea horses, but like actually the size of horses, and the dregs, the zombies. It was just so cool. But I feel like the first part of this book was very much the romance, and felt very much like you've got male just set in like a fantasy world. And then the end was really like the fantasy story. So I wish that felt a little bit more complete throughout the entire book. But this, like I said, was just so unique and unlike anything I've read. So I highly recommend. It was definitely a fun story. All right, and then last up, we have Haunted Wood. And I feel like For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten has one of the most unsettling haunted woods I've ever read about. So in this community, if there are two girls born, the first one is for the throne and the second one is for the wolf. So we are following Red. We're actually following both sisters, but this book is mostly based on Red. And she is being given to this haunted wood and eventually given to the wolf. So it's not expected that she's going to survive this journey to the wolf. And when she gets into the woods right away, she realizes why. This wood almost has like a sentence, like it is very evil and it wants to kill her right away. And you can just really tell that. It's written in a way that you are just freaked out by this wood. So somehow she manages to get through to the wolf, and we find out that the wolf is actually a man. Big surprise. So there is a bit of a romance, but this book is not very romance heavy. It is really just following these two girls that are trying to find each other again. So the sister that is for the throne is now dealing with throne politics, and she's kind of being manipulated. And there's also this whole dark magic at play. And I really, really enjoyed this. I had planned on talking about the second book, For the Throne. It is released. I own it, and I had planned to read it prior to filming this video. Once again, that did not happen. So I will be reading For the Throne over the next 2 weeks, and I will be talking about it in my September wrap-up. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching my fall fantasy book recommendations. Please let me know if you have any books that remind you of fall. Let me know down in the comments below. And I said this already, I post new videos every Thursday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye!